Rome. The Campus Martius, a wooden amphitheatre Nero built in a single year, not yet a decade old, still smelling of fresh pine and old blood. You are standing in the centre of it. The man at your feet has just stopped moving. He had 16 victories carved into his record. You have 0. You walked onto this sand an hour ago as a novice, a Tiro, a name nobody knew. Now 50,000 throats are chanting it. Spiculus, Spiculus, Spiculus. How does a man owned as property end up so rich that the Emperor of Rome, overthrown, hunted, dying, calls for him as the only man worthy to land the killing blow? The sand under your sandals is soaked. The Gallic model helmet on your head is hammered with the crest of a fish. The shield on your left arm is taller than most men in this crowd. And from the imperial box, pale skin, wet eyes, leaning forward like a man who has just seen something he wants, the most dangerous person in the empire has just decided you belong to him. His name is Nero.
I'm Albert. Every other channel tells you how Nero died. Almost nobody tells you that the man Nero called for in his final hour had already been killed that same afternoon by Nero's own people. Because his story isn't a war story, it's a wealth story, the kind that broke Roman law, the kind classical historians still can't agree on. Whether he refused the emperor's final call, or whether he was already dead when it came.
So imagine you are 17 years old. You are standing in chains in a barracks in Capua. You have never held a real sword. You have never killed a man. And the school has just told you that in 3 months you will fight a freedman with 16 victories. And the school doesn't expect you to walk off the sand. What do you do? But before any of this, before the emperor gives you estates Rome reserves for conquering generals, before you become the richest slave Rome has ever seen, before the day the city turns on both of you, you are property. Let me take you back. The year is the mid-50s AD. Nero has been emperor barely 3 years. You arrive at the Gladiator school at Capua, the same city, the same tradition, the same walls that produced Spartacus 100 years before you. The school has just been renamed in the new emperor's honour, the Ludus Neronianus. The doctor runs his hands over your shoulders, measures your reach. He classes you as Mamillo, the heavy class, big rectangular shield, straight short sword, fish-crested helmet, built to absorb punishment and grind opponents into the sand. Above the master's table hangs a wooden sword, the Rudis, the symbol of freedom. Most men in this barracks will die in iron. A handful will hold that wooden sword. You will hold it within 2 years. But first you have to survive a man named Aptonetus. Aptonetus is a liberatus, a freed Roman who chose the arena. He fights Thraex, Thracian class, curved short sword, small shield, fast as a knife in the dark. He has fought 16 times, he has won 16 times. The school pairs you against him for your debut. Nobody bets on you. The match happens.
Come to die then!
The Pompeii graffito records the result. Spiculus, of the Neronian school, novice, 1. Aptonetus, freedman, 16 victories, dead. That graffito is still there, still readable, scratched into the plaster of a house called the Casa del Fauno, catalogued by archaeologists, almost 2,000 years old. A teenager scratched your name into a wall in a city that wouldn't be buried in ash for another 20 years. And the wall outlasted the city, outlasted the empire, outlasted everything, except your name. Would you have killed the veteran with 16 victories knowing you had never fought a real match in your life? You did. And from the imperial box, Nero leaned forward. He is in his late teens, maybe early 20s. He has been emperor since he was 16. He is obsessed with performance, chariots, theatre, singing. The arena is his addiction, and he has just watched a novice do something that wasn't supposed to be possible. He sends for you that night. The emperor comes to the Ludus, drunk, unannounced. He stands too close. He uses your name like he owns it. He wants to see how his new favourite trains. The other gladiators do not look at him. Looking at the emperor without permission is a crime that ends with you back on the sand. You hold the wooden sword, you go through the drills, and in the corner of the room, the emperor of Rome watches a slave who 6 months ago could not afford a meal. The next fight is a man named Columbus. Another match, another victory. Somewhere in southern Gaul, a craftsman who has never seen Rome paints your fight onto a glass cup. The cup is buried in a tomb, excavated centuries later. It now sits in the Corning Museum of Glass in New York State. You don't know any of this yet, you just know you are winning. Then comes the gift you've been waiting 2 years for. The rudies, the wooden sword, pressed into your palm by Nero himself. You are free, but Nero doesn't let you go. He gives you the wooden sword, and then he gives you something stranger, something no freed gladiator in Roman history has ever been given. A document, sealed with the imperial signet, granting you ownership of a country estate outside Rome. And that document, the parchment in your hand with your name written under the emperor's seal, is the thing that should not legally exist. We'll come back to why. You are at the palace now, the Domus Transitoria, the imperial residence before the Great Fire. Marble floors, lamprey pools, slaves with peacock feather fans. The first night, Tigellinus finds you in the corridor. He is the Praetorian prefect, the man turning Nero's paranoia into a machine for killing senators. He looks you up and down, he smiles, he says one sentence quietly in your ear. The emperor's favourites have a short shelf life. Try to be useful. Then he walks away. That night, you eat dinner 3 couches from Sporus. The boy Nero is in the process of castrating to make him resemble Nero's dead wife Pompeii. You eat dinner 2 couches from Statilia Messalina, Nero's 3rd wife, whose previous husband Nero ordered to commit suicide, so the marriage could happen. These are the people you eat dinner with now. AD 64. The Great Fire breaks out on the 18th of July. It burns for 9 days. 6 of Rome's 14 districts are destroyed. 3 are wiped out entirely. Nero is in Antium when it starts. He returns to a smoking city. The rumours begin almost immediately that he started it, that he sang the fall of Troy while it burned. Tacitus, our most reliable source, says he sang. To deflect blame, Nero crucifies a small religious sect called Christians. He burns them alive in his gardens to serve as evening illumination. You watch this from a couch carved out of African ivory. AD 65, the Pisonian Conspiracy. A senator named Gaius Calpurnius Piso plots to kill Nero and replace him. The plot is uncovered. The executions begin. Seneca, Nero's old tutor, ordered to open his veins in his own bathtub. Lucan, the poet, the same. 19 people die, 13 exiled. The Senate is gutted. And here is the part that should make your hands shake. You don't just watch the executions. The emperor's favourites are expected to attend them. To stand in the bathhouse while a senator's blood goes pink in the water. To stand in the dining room while a poet recites verse he has just composed about his own death. Slaves who attend get richer, slaves who refuse get the same bath. So you attend. You are now richer than men whose families have held office since the Roman Republic. And here is the part nobody tells you. Under Roman law, actual codified Roman law, the law that has governed property in this empire for 400 years, none of what you own is technically yours. Everything you have is held under something the Romans called Peculium. It's a legal category for property held by a slave or a freedman that legally belongs to the master, or in your case, the former master. Even after manumission, your patron retains claims on you, your estates, your slaves, your future earnings. The wooden sword Nero pressed into your palm freed your body, not your fortune. Here is what that means in practical terms. If Nero dies tonight, if the wine is poisoned, if a senator finally gets close enough with a blade, if the gods strike him down for what he did to Christians in his gardens, every estate you own reverts to his heirs. Every slave you bought goes back into the imperial household. Every gold ring on your fingers is inventoried by an imperial freedman with a wax tablet and a list. You don't inherit anything. You are the inheritance. The richest slave in Rome isn't a paradox. It's a legal description. You are not Nero's friend. You are Nero's inventory. The wealthiest hostage Rome has ever produced. What happens when the man who legally owns everything you have starts murdering people closer to him than you are? You find out by getting closer. You make yourself indispensable. You laugh at his songs, you praise his poetry, you eat the food he serves you, and you pretend the senator who used to own the platter isn't the senator whose veins were opened last Tuesday. And somewhere in Spain, a 72-year-old governor named Galba is reading reports from Rome about what the emperor's favourites are being given. The list is getting longer, your name is at the top of it. On the cleared blocks where Roman families used to live, Nero builds the Domus Aurea, the Golden House. A palace covering an estimated 300 acres of central Rome, its own artificial lake. The dining room ceiling revolves like the night sky, scattering flowers and perfume on the guests below. And in the entrance vestibule, Nero is having something built that has never been built before in the history of Rome. A bronze statue of himself, 120 Roman feet tall. The Greek sculptor Zenodorus is brought in to cast it, and Pliny the Elder, who actually visited the workshop while it was being made, tells us Zenodorus charged 40 million sesterces for the commission. For comparison, a Roman legionary earned around 900 sesterces a year. Nero's bronze portrait of himself cost more than 40,000 soldiers earned in a lifetime. The Romans called it the Colossus. And a generation later, when the Flavian amphitheatre was built on the drained lake of the Golden House, the locals named the amphitheatre after the statue still standing in its shadow. The Colosseum. The most famous building in Rome takes its name from a 120-foot vanity statue of the man who made you rich. That's the world you live in now. This is the part the title promised, so let's land it properly. In his biography of Nero, the Roman historian Suetonius records the gifts the emperor made to his favourites. There are 3 of them. A harper named Menecrates, a usurer named Cercopithecus, and 1 gladiator, you. And the gift Suetonius describes is so scandalous, he uses a specific Roman legal phrase to describe it. Patrimonia et domos triumphalium virorum. The estates and houses of men who had been honoured with triumphs. To understand why that phrase is a scandal, you have to understand what a triumph was. A triumph was the highest military honour Rome could bestow, reserved for generals who had conquered nations, burned cities, marched chained foreign kings through the streets behind their chariots. The estates of triumphal men weren't normal estates, they were land grants worth a senator's annual income 10 times over, multiple country villas, entire urban blocks, rural slaves working agricultural land that fed Roman cities. Nero gives them to you. A gladiator, a former slave, a man who 6 months earlier wore an iron collar around his neck. You conquered 1 man in an arena. The Roman state cannot tell the difference between that and conquering Gaul. And Nero does not care. How rich are you actually? In the same passage, same chapter, same paragraph, Suetonius tells us what Nero spent on the visiting king of Armenia, Tiridates, 800,000 sesterces per day, and a parting gift of over 1 million. That's 1,000 legionaries' annual salary spent on one day of one royal visit, and you live in the same financial register. You own slaves now. The man who 6 months ago was property now buys property. The collar that was around your neck is now around the necks of men who serve your wine. You walk past your former barracks at the Ludus Neronianus, and there are gladiators in there with the same iron around their throats, hoping to one day stand where you stand. You walk into the Domus Aurea. The consul whose family has held office since the Republic, 300 years of Roman aristocracy, steps aside when you enter. The senator bows. The freedman you bought last week pours your wine. The gold rings on your fingers. Those fingers were chained 18 months ago. But every ring still belongs, in the final analysis, to the man whose statue is being cast in bronze outside. And then a letter arrives at the Domus Aurea. From Gaul, from a governor named Vindex. Nero reads it. He goes pale. He doesn't show it to you. But you see his face. You know what a face looks like when the man who legally owns everything you have has just realized the floor is no longer underneath him. It is March AD 68. The collapse takes 90 days. Gaius Julius Vindex, governor of Gallia Lugdunensis, sends letters to every governor in the Western Empire. Most burn them. One doesn't. Servius Sulpicius Galba, 72 years old, governor of Hispania Tarraconensis, keeps the letter and waits. Early April, Galba's legions acclaim him emperor at Carthago Nova. He refuses the title officially. He calls himself legate of the Senate and people of Rome. Everybody knows what that means. May, Vindex is crushed at the Battle of Vesontio. He commits suicide. The rebellion he started doesn't die with him. The Praetorian Guard shifts, the Senate moves, the Domus Aurea empties, the slaves walk out, the cooks walk out, the Praetorians walk out. On the night of June the 8th, the Praetorian prefect Nymphidius Sabinus declares that Nero has fled to Egypt. It's a lie. But the Senate believes it. They declare Nero a public enemy, punishment to be carried out more maiorum, the ancient way, stripped naked, head pinned in a wooden fork, beaten to death with rods in the public square. How far would you run if you were the most visible favourite of the most hated man in Rome and the city had just turned? It is the morning of June the 9th, AD 68. You walk into a Rome that does not want you anymore. You don't make it far. The Greek historian Plutarch, writing in his Life of Galba, records what happens next. The mob is in the Roman Forum. They are toppling Nero's statues, bronze, marble, gilded. The same statues that have stood watch over Rome for 14 years are being dragged into the dust. They catch you. They throw you under the falling stone. You die under the face of the man who made you, crushed by his own bronze likeness, mid-morning, in the heart of Rome. Plutarch names another victim killed the same way that same morning, a man called Aptonetus, one of Nero's informers, a stone-laden wagon dragged across him in the street. You are not alone in the crowd's fury. You are just the most famous. 4 miles northeast of the city, between the Via Salaria and the Via Nomentana, is the villa of a freedman named Phaon. Nero is hiding inside it. He arrived that morning, disguised in a faded cloak and a farmer's hat, riding a borrowed horse. With him are 4 men: Phaon, who owns the villa; Epaphroditus, his secretary; Sporus, the boy he had castrated and married; and Neophytus, another freedman. They are the last 4 people in the world loyal to him. A messenger reads the Senate's decree aloud: public enemy, death more maiorum. Nero panics. He calls for someone, anyone, trained to kill cleanly. He calls for Spiculus the Gladiator, or any other adept at whose hand he might find death. the exact line preserved by Suetonius. The messengers run. They search the city for you. They cannot find you, because you are not in the city. You are in the forum, under marble, already gone. Nero waits. The messengers come back, empty-handed. "Have I neither friends nor enemies left?" he says. He puts the blade against his own throat. He cannot push it in. Epaphroditus steadies the hilt. The blade goes in. The Emperor of Rome dies aged 30. His last words, recorded in Latin, "Qualis artifex pereo." What an artist dies in me. Two men, the same city, the same afternoon. One dies under bronze. One dies under his own hand. Neither of them ever knew. Galba enters Rome in the autumn. He spends his first months hunting Nero's surviving favourites. He doesn't have to deal with you. You're already gone. Galba's own reign lasts 7 months. He is killed in the Forum on the 15th of January AD 69. The year of the 4 emperors begins. Rome tears itself apart. The 120-foot bronze statue of Nero, the one whose name became the Colosseum, gets a new head bolted on by Vespasian. Same body, same pose, different face. The empire couldn't quite bring itself to melt down something that big. But you, the slave who became the gladiator, who became the wealthiest enslaved man Rome ever produced, you survive in 3 places. The first is on a wall in Pompeii, CIL 4.1474. Your debut victory over Aptonetus, buried by Vesuvius 11 years after you died, excavated by Italian archaeologists, still readable today. The second is on a glass cup found in a tomb in southern France, depicting your fight with Columbus, now in a museum in New York State. The third is in the pages of Suetonius, written half a century after your death, recording a scandal that no Roman writer could quite let go of. You are the only Roman gladiator from Nero's entire reign whose name we still know. What does it mean to die calling for a friend who has already died calling for you? It means this. Rome had a category of wealth, triumphal estates, reserved for the most successful generals in its history. Men who had conquered nations, killed kings, burned cities. A gladiator was given that category of wealth for killing one man in an arena. The model didn't die when he died. It survived. It evolved. 2,000 years later, the structure he embodied is the economic engine of every major sport on Earth. Every athlete who signs a contract larger than the GDP of a small country. Every entertainer who out-earns the politicians who tax them. Spiculus didn't invent it, but he was the first one Rome killed for it. The last thing you ever saw was bronze. Not the bronze of the Colossus. That was still being cast when you died, still incomplete, still wearing the emperor's face. The bronze that fell on you was a portrait statue, smaller, older, cast a decade before when Nero was still loved. His face, dragged through the Forum by a mob who had stopped pretending. That same afternoon, 4 miles to the northeast, the man whose face it was would call your name into a room full of strangers.
No.
And nobody would answer him. One under bronze, one under his own hand, the same face on both endings. If you had been Spiculus that morning in June, if the mob hadn't caught you, if you had walked the 4 miles northeast to Phaon's villa, would you have answered the emperor's call? Or would you have let him die alone? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see how a captive woman in Roman-era Alexandria built a personal empire that funded the early Christian church for generations, I'll see you in the next one.